There's a kind of quiet majesty hidden in wood grain, those sweeping lines, rippling curls, and swirling growth rings that stretch across a board like fingerprints. Every piece of wood carries its own story, a silent biography written over years, decades, sometimes centuries. You can feel it under your fingertips, see it shimmer in shifting light, smell its subtle presence when it's freshly cut or gently sanded. That texture, that character, that living pattern etched by time, it's not just a surface detail. It's a natural art form. And when we use it as inspiration, when we create art from and around it, we're not just working with material. We're collaborating with nature. Wood grain art doesn't begin with a brush or a tool. It begins with observation, with reverence, with letting yourself get lost in the layered lines of a walnut slab, or the flame-like streaks in a piece of maple. It starts with staring at the way one line breaks off into a spiral, or the way a knot warps everything around it like a ripple in water. Before anything is built, before any cut is made, the grain itself becomes the artist. You're simply following its lead. The beauty of natural wood grain is how unpredictable it can be. Some pieces are calm and linear, with long, straight fibers that run in parallel lines. Others are chaotic and wild, curled, knotted, burled, with swirls and folds that twist like smoke. A single board might contain multiple personalities. The outer edge might be quiet and clean, while the center blooms with intense, swirling complexity. And every species has its own vocabulary. Oak speaks in bold, strong lines. Cherry whispers in smooth, gentle curves. Ash gives off a grain that's almost topographical, while cedar sings in dark and light bands like music written into wood. Artists who work with wood grain don't cover it up, they highlight it. They bring it forward. Sometimes it's as simple as selecting the right cut. A live-edge slab left unpainted, sealed only with oil to deepen the color and bring out the natural shimmer. The result doesn't need any added design. It is the design. The grain itself becomes the composition, drawing the eye with its natural flow and rhythm. It becomes a landscape, a moment frozen in time. But wood grain doesn't have to stay flat. Many artists choose to carve into it, not to erase the texture but to enhance it. Shallow grooves might follow the lines of the grain, deepening the contrast between light and shadow. A chisel, carefully pulled along the same direction as the fibers, can accentuate the grain's movement, making it look like flowing fabric or wind-blown sand dunes. You're not fighting the grain. You're dancing with it. And then there's burning. Not to destroy but to emphasize. The ancient Japanese technique of shosugi-ban does exactly this. Torch the surface until the soft summer growth burns away, leaving behind the harder winter grain as raised ridges. When brushed clean and sealed, the surface feels almost prehistoric, like fossilized wood. You see the growth rings pop in 3 dimensions. You run your fingers over the texture and feel the story of each year, the fast summers, the slow winters. It becomes tactile, physical, alive. Color can be added, but always with restraint. A light stain to emphasize contrast. A wash of white or black to highlight the pattern without hiding it. Some artists use pigments to fill in the cracks and lines, like veins of colored resin running through a cross-section of a tree. Others carve the grain deeper and fill it with epoxy, bright turquoise, deep emerald, smoky gray, turning the wood's natural texture into a flowing river of color. Some works are mounted on the wall like canvases, panels of solid grain, arranged in precise symmetry or beautiful asymmetry. You might have 3 square tiles of book-matched wood, where the grain mirrors itself like butterfly wings. Or a series of long planks, each with a different species, lined up in a rhythm of shifting grain patterns. These pieces don't demand attention. They command it, quietly, powerfully, through stillness and depth. Others take a sculptural route. Cylindrical carvings that expose concentric growth rings like topographic maps. Wave-like surfaces created by sanding and shaping the wood along its grain until the surface ripples and undulates. Some artists even sandblast away the softer grain, creating raised ridges that mimic ancient driftwood or petrified logs. These pieces are almost geological, like something pulled from the earth instead of made by hand. In modern interiors, where clean lines and minimalism often dominate, wood grain art becomes the bridge between calm design and organic complexity. A large, frameless slab hung vertically on a white wall can transform a sterile space into something soulful. A carved wood panel with repeating grain textures adds depth to what would otherwise be a flat room. Even a series of small tiles, each one showing a different wood's natural fingerprint, can create a gallery wall of living texture. And it doesn't always have to be polished and precise. Rustic interpretations of wood grain art lean into roughness. Think of wide planks, unevenly cut, with cracks and knots left intact. The grain isn't curated, it's embraced in all its wildness. Maybe it's stained dark and mounted in a crisscross pattern. Maybe it's left completely raw with only the faintest oil rubbed in to protect it. The imperfections become the point. The rawness becomes the beauty. There's also a meditative quality to working with wood grain. As you plane a board, the pattern slowly reveals itself, changing and shifting as the surface becomes smooth. As you apply oil, the color deepens and the lines darken as if waking up from sleep. Each step, cutting, sanding, finishing, feels like peeling away layers of time. You're not just creating a piece of art. You're uncovering one. And once the art is complete, it speaks in a voice that's both ancient and timeless. Wood grain connects us back to the forest, to trees that grew in silence, to rings formed through droughts and rains. It reminds us that beauty doesn't have to be manufactured. It can be grown, slowly, patiently, over years. It can be hidden in something as simple as a plank of wood. People often overlook this. They see wood as background, furniture, flooring, construction. But when you isolate the grain, when you bring it front and center, you begin to see it differently. You see a natural intelligence, a quiet, organic design that we can't replicate. We can only reveal it. This is the soul of wood grain art. It's not about adding to the wood, it's about listening to it, honoring it, letting it guide the process. Whether it's a delicate carving that follows the subtle lines of the grain, or a bold wall piece made from raw slabs, the goal is always the same: to showcase what nature already created. And in doing so, we reconnect with something deeper, with slowness, with tactility, with a kind of visual poetry that doesn't shout, but whispers. Whispers in lines and waves and knots, in color shifts and fiber trails, in rings and rays. Whispers that tell you to slow down, to notice, to feel. Wood grain art doesn't just decorate a space, it grounds it. It brings in the weight of time, the rhythm of growth, the texture of life itself. And that's the beauty of it. It's not just natural. It's deeply human. Because in every cut, in every finish, in every panel hung on a wall, we're telling a story, not just of what we made, but of what was already there waiting to be seen. Some people look at a piece of wood and see a surface, a material to cut, shape, cover, or hide. But others look closer. They follow the grain. They notice the movement. They see patterns, not made by machines but by nature. And that's where the art begins. Not with invention, with attention. Every board is different. Even two cuts from the same tree can have completely different grain. One tight and straight like piano strings. Another loose, curling, wild like a fingerprint stretched across the years. That's what makes wood grain art so compelling. It's not about what you add. It's about what's already there, and how you choose to show it. Sometimes the build is simple. A single slab of figured hardwood, sanded down smooth, the grain brought to life with oil. It doesn't need anything else. You hang it on a wall and it speaks for itself. Waves of growth lines shimmer under the light. Chatoyance, the natural shifting glow inside some wood, moves as you walk by. That kind of presence doesn't come from complexity. It comes from trust. Trusting the material. Knowing when to stop. Other times the process is more layered. You might join multiple boards edge to edge, chosen not for color but for pattern. A tight spiral knot becomes the visual anchor. A waterfall of parallel grain becomes the rhythm. You can spend hours matching pieces, not to hide the seams, but to let the grain flow across them like it was never interrupted. And then there's live edge work, where the outer contour of the wood, the exact shape the tree grew, is left exposed. It's not just rustic, it's sculptural. You're letting the tree speak in its own voice. The art isn't just on the face of the board. It's in the shape, the curve, the asymmetry. And when you place it right, against a flat wall in a clean room, it becomes both contrast and connection. Wildness held in place. Grain tells you where the tree grew fast and where it slowed down, where it bent toward light or leaned into wind. You can see the seasons in it, you can feel time in it, and that texture, it's not just visual, it's tactile. You run your hand over a ridged oak panel and your skin reads the story. You oil a piece of curly maple, and the grain glows like it's alive. There's nothing fake about it. No pattern printed on top. No imitation. Just what the tree already was revealed. You don't need stains. You don't need colors. You don't need epoxy rivers or flashy additions. If the grain is strong enough, all you need is light. Let it catch the angles. Let it cast shadow across the low points and bring warmth to the highs. That's the core of natural texture. It changes depending on where you're standing, on what time of day it is, on how much attention you're paying. Some artists go even further, carving into the wood to emphasize the grain's path. Sandblasting the soft growth rings away to leave a 3D ripple. Burning the surface, brushing out the char, sealing the structure that's left. These methods don't hide the grain. They reveal it in new dimensions. You're not covering the wood. You're translating it, giving it a stronger voice. And it's not about exotic species. You don't need rare burl or imported hardwood to make it work. Common woods, pine, ash, fir, can be beautiful when treated with respect. It's not about price. It's about patience. About seeing the grain before it's sanded. About planning your cuts to let the lines run clean and honest. About choosing not the straightest board but the most interesting one. When the piece is finished, it doesn't look decorated. It looks discovered. Like it was always meant to look this way. And that's when you know the grain led the process, not the other way around. You didn't impose your design, you listened for it. Wood grain art is quiet, but it isn't shy. It doesn't need to scream to be noticed. All it takes is one well-lit panel on a wall to draw the eye. A slab with movement. A series of aligned strips that flow like water. A single knotted, weathered plank that makes you stop and look twice. It's the kind of art you don't just see, you feel it. Through your fingertips. Through memory. Through that deep, unexplainable sense of organic order. This is what natural texture offers. A reminder that beauty doesn't have to be made from scratch. Sometimes it's already there. All you have to do is remove what's in the way.